Hey guys, welcome to a very special edition of Somewhere in Vegas here on blogtalkradio.com and our new home over at Spreaker.com. I am Mark the Q, I'm your host. This past week, a very good friend of the show passed, one of our former guests, Brody Stevens. Brody was a very hilarious comedian, also an actor. You could have seen him in Hangover 1 and 2. He's a really funny guy. Star in Periscope as well. Had his own show on Periscope for quite a long time. Steps with Brody. If you ever see that hashtag, then you know that's Brody's show. Brody was a really cool working comedian. He worked on a lot of shows as a warm-up act, including At Midnight on Comedy Central and Chelsea Lately on E, where I got to see him for the first time live. I went to a couple of tapings. I got to see him two different times and did interact with him a little bit, but I'm pretty sure he doesn't remember me. From that, he may even remember from this interview, though. It's a sad thing, just the fact that Brody was really dealing with some mental illness, and it was publicly stated, and he talks a little bit about that in the interview we conducted with him as well. It's just, it's kind of sad to see, such a great talent. And he was really working on himself. He was really trying to make the best of the situation and always looked on the bright side of things and was finding things to be able to make his life a little bit easier and make people laugh and everything like that. So it was really sad for us to hear of his passing last week. So I figured I would give you guys a little insight into Brody. We talk a lot about his love of baseball, doing warm-up, and his love of comedy. A little bit into his mental illness as well. I mean, it's really great to be able to see kind of some insight into who Brody Stevens was. And if you guys have never knew who Brody Stevens was, this will give you a nice little slice of life into who Brody is and all that as well. So here is our interview with Brody Stevens from a few years ago.
Welcome, Brody, to the show.
Thank you.
I actually got a chance to see you this summer when I went to see a couple of the Chelsea tapings in L.A., which is really, really cool. And that was right around the time the Lakers won, actually. I think he had an L.A. Laker, actually, in one of your audiences, one of the guests, actually, on the show.
Derek Fisher, probably.
Yeah, that was correct. Yep. Yeah, and
I remember all my guests.
I think you would. And I mean, you're a huge sports nut. You're a huge LA sports nut, right?
Well, I know sports. I grew up here in LA, and I played baseball in high school, and I played baseball in college. And I grew up, following the Lakers and the Dodgers, and it was just kind of, we had the two football teams. Now we have no teams, but UCLA, USC. So yeah, I like sports growing up, definitely.
And I mean, you're obviously a huge Dodger fan. I think you're a real Dodger fan. When I was in the audience, you gloated that you were went to see a Dodgers game. I think before you went to a taping or something like that. And they made it. They made it to the playoffs, but they didn't quite make it this year to the World Series.
Yeah, a little disappointing. It was a good season, a good run, but kind of like what it was last year. And last year was nice because they didn't expect to do it. This year they kind of expected to make the playoffs, but it was kind of a downer of an ending only because how it happened. And they could have, they were good enough to make it to the World Series, and they didn't. But that happens, you learn from it. But to lose twice the last 2 years in the championship game, it's kind of like take something out of you.
Well, I mean, yeah, then you pick yourself back up and you try again. That's what it's all about, I mean, you get your hearts broken every single year, but at one point you're going to end up winning it. Even the Boston Red Sox proved that. So how did you get into comedy?
Basically, people just said that I was kind of funny. Hey, Brody, you're funny. You should try comedy. Because I kind of like acting. I didn't mind the attention. I knew that, I played on a lot of different teams, summer teams, and every year I was on different teams. So, guys say, hey, Brody, you're funny, but I never thought like to be a comedian. But I didn't mind the attention when it was something, like I was in control of. And later on, my later years in college, comedy was, this is like I was in college from 88 to 93. So the comedy boom was kind of like at its peak, I think, right then. And people were saying, hey, Brody, you should do comedy, this kind of thing. So that kind of like, the comedy boom, yeah, I got interested in comedy, but I really didn't start pursuing comedy until after the boom. But I would say, yeah, it happened after college. I never did any comedy in college other than I took an acting class at Arizona State. It was kind of interesting. I took 2 acting classes, and that kind of lit a fire a little bit, like, oh, I like this. And I wasn't doing I did some comedic pieces in there, and a few girls, and it was something I liked, actually. And I thought, I wouldn't mind doing this. So I knew that another few months of baseball, and then after that I said, I'm gonna. And guys would say, hey, you should try some comedy. I felt like comedy, acting, all right. And I knew it would be a long road, but I figured I'd handle it like I handled my baseball career. So that's when I started in 94 up in Seattle. But after college, I would definitely say playing baseball and being on these college baseball especially kind of like, made me tougher, kind of like defined who I was in terms of like that foundation.
What were your influences, comic influences?
My comic influences were probably, like I was into wrestling. I always thought that was funny. I liked Benny Hill. I wasn't necessarily a fan of stand-up comedy. It's not like I grew up watching Saturday Night Live or I had all of, Richard Pryor's albums and all that sort of thing. My dad was funny. I liked Gary Shandling. I liked Super Dave Osborne, funny stuff like that. And like I said, wrestling was kind of, I got a kick out of that. So I would say that sort of stuff. But comedians, self-deprecating stuff, Gary Shandling. But for me, it was like, I like Beavis and Butthead. I got a kick out of wrestling. So I like, those are like, just try to implement that sort of stuff. Because I would feel like watching too much comedy. I guess if you watch a lot of different comedians, you could pick up, different skills by watching so many different comedians. There's some comedians, that watch too many of the same comedians. They're influenced too much by a certain comedian. You watch that guy too much. But if you're watching a lot of different comedy, maybe you'll pick up something here, something there, something here. I just feel like I didn't want to watch too much stand-up necessarily, just because that stuff rubs off on you. I didn't want those thoughts to enter my head. I feel like everything I do on stage, I want to be kind of like from me. I don't want it to feel like, oh, I got that idea from that guy, or I got it from watching him. So it's kind of a weird thing, but I got to get over it. I don't think it's a good thing, because, you want to be able to watch your friends and stuff. It's like listening to radio, like Howard Stern. I had a cable access show in Seattle for 3 years. We did about 175 live TV shows in Seattle, kind of where I cut my teeth in terms of being like this Brody persona. And, it's like Howard Stern was popular back then. He was on cable TV. I think it was on E! And I just felt like he was funny. Howard Stern's funny. But if you watch too much of it, that stuff rubs off on you. So it's like sometimes if I like something a lot, I kind of like have to cut myself away from it. I've heard comedians talk about, like, they're a fan of David Tell. So you watch everything David Tell, and you end up sounding like David Tell, or Jim Gaffigan, or Zach Galifianakis, or even me. I hear guys say, Brody, I can't watch you. They start sounding like you. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. It's like they like you, but certain comedians know they watch too much of the same thing for a long period of time. You pick up, you start sounding like that guy.
I wanted to ask you, well, since you're a huge wrestling fan, who was your favorite wrestler growing up?
I liked Roddy Piper. I liked Mean Gene Okerlund in terms of his announcing. I liked, the Sergeant Slaughters. I went to the whole Cyndi Lauper War to Settle the Score stuff with, Hulk Hogan and the Iron Sheik. Just the whole theater of wrestling and them being on the mic and doing the, brother, let me tell you, it's like, I got a kick out of that stuff. Not all the time, Well, I'd watch a little bit of that stuff on, like, TBS wrestling, the stuff in the studio, but mostly WWF.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan, and I know Piper's going to be on Raw next week, which is really exciting. So Piper's going to be back in the ring talking, and he always kind of captivated a lot of people, and he spoke his mind when he was in the ring, and that made him such a great person. I was a Ric Flair fan growing up, so I was totally into Ric Flair and all that too, and I used to be a Hulkamaniac, and then I turned to a Flair fan after Royal Rumble '92, so yeah, I mean it's a great kind of thing. I mean it's very rare for somebody to say that, but they do have kind of a persona in the ring, and you have a persona on stage anywhere, even in comedy, you have that kind of persona that you are on stage and you speak your mind, and and they have an ability to connect with the audience, and that's the same thing with comedians. They have to have the ability to be able to connect with the audience. So it is a kind of an interesting kind of parallel.
Definitely. It's I also like Gorilla Monsoon. I get a kick out of him, listening to him do announcing. Jesse the Body Ventura. Those guys are great. Yeah, it's you got to have a character. You got to connect with the people. Those wrestling fans, as crazy as they're passionate. They're very, it's about making that connection. I try to do that with my comedy for sure. I just know that people like feeling like they're part of something. So it's basic skills. It's they want to feel special. People want to, it's positive energy. I learned that actually from my friend Tana, my Samoan comedy partner up in Seattle, and he taught me just about being happy. It's funny to be happy, to get excited about the little things. Instead of being a cool guy, comedy's not cool. Comedy is about goofy and simple almost, and be excited about. Excited about the little things. That was my angle. Not cursing, being happy, being in the moment, letting the audience in on everything. Don't let them feel like they're not a part of the show. There's nothing like that tension that releases it. And yeah, it's just like being a goofball, being you don't want to take yourself too seriously. So I work hard. I just think when I did comedy up in Seattle, I'm a Jewish guy. You get Jewish guys are very they're known in comedy. But I worked with a Samoan guy. It's how many Jews work with Samoans? So I got that Samoan island energy, and I kind of combined it with my Jewishness. And I don't perform with Tana anymore, but I kind of carry that on to my day. It's it really is people do influence you, and I don't know. I'm kind of rambling here. Help me out here.
Okay, the next question I have is how did you get involved with Chelsea lately? How did you get the gig as the kind of the opening warm-up comedian?
Well, I've done a lot of audience warm-up. I worked at Fox Sports, Best Damn Sports Show for over 1,200 shows. I've done The Man Show. I've done Little Britain. I've done little pilots. I've done comedy tapings. I've done variety shows, done award shows. So basically, over the years, since 2001, I'll say, people know that I've done warm-up. So I had that kind of reputation. And with Chelsea, I'd been working on the Best Damn Sports Show, and they kind of got rid of the audience. So I had about maybe a couple months, 3 months, where I wasn't really working consistently on any show. Just kind of taking it easy between gigs. And one of the stage managers, Matt Marina, who works at Chelsea, he had worked over at the Best Damn Sports Show. So I would see him in the airport, actually, up in Las Vegas, because he would be working on UFC events, and I was working on a poker show for Fox Sports. So I'd see him, and he'd go, "Hey, Brody, I got to get you into Chelsea. We're working down. We got to try and get you in there." I go, "Okay, Matt, I got some time." So I would see Matt in the airport in Las Vegas. He'd be doing a UFC. I'd be doing a poker show. And so they contacted me. They gave me some dates, and I kind of did it. I got it. I understood and I've known Chelsea for a long time. She was surprised that I actually took the gig. She was thinking I was doing some other stuff. So, I like doing warm-up. It's a hard work. It's a hard job, and it's a grind. And, the hours are pretty good in terms of, the actual work. But, there's a lot of preparation, and there's mental preparation and physical, and it takes a lot of energy out of you. So, yeah, it's an hour of work, possibly, but there's a price to be paid for it. But I got into that basically just from doing warm-up. That's, work gets work. I don't seek out work. People kind of contact me. And warm-up's a weird thing.